I don't believe I have a report today, other than welcome everyone to the council meeting. That concludes my report.
All right. Any departmental reports today? If not, we'll move on to council report. Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Gaines?
All right, I want to thank the mayor for going out with me, addressing some of the needs of the community, riding through the community. So I just wanted to say I appreciate that. On another note, Thursday, I want to invite everyone out. Beck-the Halls, Henry Beck Park, we're having a Christmas caroling. You get to hear me sing some of those Christmas carols on Thursday, 5:30 to 7:30. And we're going to have one of my favorite movies, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So thank you.
Mr. Deming?
I have no report. However, Mike and Mr. Mayor, if you would, could you have Ms. Labonte give me an update on the dredging for around the Boshin area and the Patricia Place Canal? Thank you.
Mr. Tisdale?
Yes, a couple of things. Could you give us a status update on the bait shop at the small craft harbor? That's up in the air, and you know, not up in figuratively and literally. And is it occupied or whatever? Bait shop down there at the small craft harbor. I'm sorry, where above the gas pump and everything.
The top deck is not occupied at this time, other than just collect some stuff that belonged to the other tenant. They're just operating from down below right now. We've had some inquiries, but no real interest in renting it at this point. So it's kind of an odd duck. I mean, it sits out there all by itself. There's not a lot of parking.
There has been some interest in some of the people who are occupying the Port Order building. I think there were some possibilities there we able to close it.
Okay. So we're open if somebody says, I'd like to look at that and do something with it. Okay.
Parking issue with this group is not an issue. I mean, so wherever they have to park, so that's an opportunity that we know.
Okay.
Floor space.
Thank you. I noticed that we have for first reading an ordinance dealing with basically a compensation schedule in some form or fashion. And what I would suggest is that perhaps we have a workshop to discuss this issue and other issues that were on the last council agenda, just in case. I'd like to see us move forward on all of this, and I don't know if we're going to be able to move forward without some discussion. So I would hope that we might have a workshop just to talk about all these things.
Well, yeah, Councilman, that as you and I have talked, that compensation schedule that's on a first reading is simply the compensation schedule. It's not the full-blown rework of the personnel ordinance that you didn't want to talk about last week. So it's just, all it is a cleanup of the compensation schedule. It's not changing anybody's pay. It's not changing anybody's titles. It's just matching what exists today. It's a 2016 compensation schedule brought forward to 2020.
Right. I think we're just moving some positions from one level to another.
We're recognizing positions that have already been moved.
Well, for positions that are moved, is the civil...
There are positions that have already been moved.
Okay,
in other words, their job title has changed, and they've been...
Right. Does the Civil Service Commission have to take any action on this? For some reason, I'm thinking they
Only
do.
if they're creating a new position, not if somebody's being redirected into a new job.
I think if there's a reallocation, I think it's how they term it. That I'll go back and look at that, but you might make a note to look at it as well, and maybe we can huddle and talk about that.
We're supposed to do this annually.
Well, I know, and I remind everybody annually for what it's worth.
Yes, you have.
The other thing is, I know I had a couple of queries about the administrative rationale not to pursue reimbursement for security costs associated with the Trump rally. And apparently this was last year. It must have been in the paper. I don't get the local paper anymore.
It was in the Clarion Ledger.
Okay. And the reason we didn't pursue that is?
Well, we were not doing this for the president or in my view, or the vice president. We were protecting our own citizens, just like we do for Black Spring Break and the Crawfish Festival, et cetera, et cetera. So we had overtime costs for traffic control and other functions that were not related to who was there, just the fact that there was a crowd, so we had to manage the traffic. So we don't ask for money back for the Crawfish Festival.
Right, or Mardi Gras, or Spring Break, or Cruising the Coast. So this is basically just a traffic safety issue. This is what we do for events like this. This is just another event.
And the Clarion Ledger asked us and Tupelo the same question, and that's what was printed. It said, how much did we spend and did we ask for reimbursement?
Okay.
And the answer was about $10,000 per event. It was very close, both of them, and we did not ask for reimbursement.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'm done.
Yes, I'd like to ask for an update on the Waters View. They did a wetland study, and I think we cleared some hurdles there, and we were going to ask the county if they could assist us in cleaning out that ditch, if I could get a report at our next meeting. Also, Director Bell, can you give me an update on the work that was done on the fields at the Sportsplex? Is that completed? Is there any other work scheduled or needed? Okay, great, appreciate that. And that concludes my report on those two items. Thank you.
Mr. Barrett.
I just want to remind everyone that we have our parade this weekend, 7 o'clock, or not 7 o'clock, at 2:30 on Tuesday. And it starts at the Chevron on Woolmarket Road, or near the Chevron on Woolmarket Road, and ends at Woolmarket Elementary. And we'll have Santa Claus, hot chocolate, and all that there when it ends. So we want to invite everyone out to be a part of that. And that's all I have.
We'll move on to the public agenda where we have citizen comments. Each person is allowed 3 minutes each to speak with a total time allotted of 45 minutes. Once you reach the desk, please state your name and address aloud for the record, as well as write it down on that paper provided. Anyone on my left, your right, that would like to come up and speak? Anyone on my left, your right? Anyone on my right, your left? Come on up. King of Neptune, right? Sorry? King of Neptune, right?
King Louis.
Those are $100 a piece.
Woo!
I have signed in. I'm Matthew Langlanez, 2493 Castile Place. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Matthew Langlanez. I'm the manager of Beacon Insurance here on Howard Avenue. My family has been here for many years, and we are a part of the community. My family owns a series of homes on Vaughn Street, which we've recently built to provide additional housing to small families in our community in Biloxi. However, despite having a designated road in front of them, it remains a dirt and gravel road. I am here today to request that the city of Biloxi finish paving the short stretch of unfinished road that is in front of my family's houses on McDonald. McDonald is a city-owned road that goes through a residential neighborhood just west of Keesler Air Force Base. You can see I've highlighted it in yellow. Unfortunately, McDonald dead ends a short distance where it should reach Glen Avenue, which is the easiest ingress-egress to the property owners living at the end of McDonald. Because of this incomplete road, homeowners on McDonald are forced to drive down a dirt gravel road or take a long detour around the neighborhood to get to and from their houses. The dirt road has become a dumping site for trash and an eyesore in the middle of an otherwise beautiful and growing neighborhood. It is clear by looking at the map on Vaughn that it was envisioned to connect to Glen Avenue. I'm sorry, I meant to say McDonald Avenue, to connect to Glen. Biloxi has even already paved the turn where McDonald's should connect to Glen. But for whatever reason, the small stretch of road was never completed. As a landowner, business owner, and taxpayer in Biloxi, I would ask that the city perform its municipal duties and finish paving the road to connect McDonald and Glen. There's a short 300 feet of road. Do you have any questions before I leave?
I do.
Yes, sir.
Is there a road cut there? As I recall, there's a lift station back there. You've got Keesler on the other side of the fence. And,
Yeah, there's
and
a
that
lift-
first portion is paved, but this last portion is not to Glen Avenue. Is that-
Yeah, what it looks like happened, and I don't remember when, but there is a lift station. There was improvements done to that lift station.
Correct.
And you can tell that the city has already placed, I believe, pipe underneath, and it is really cut nice road. But for whatever reason, it wasn't topped. So, I mean,
I'd just like to add to Mr. Langenez, for the record, several years ago, there was an unpaved road in my ward named Wetzel Drive. There was a couple houses there. We paved it, and now today there's about 20 homes and probably another 20 that are probably getting ready to purchase some land and invest in that area. So investing in these roads in situations like this only bring more development.
Yeah, thank you for Councilman Glavin. And the, if you see on the, where I've highlighted, there are 6 lots there that we'd like to develop, but as a citizen, it costs me over $50,000 to invest to complete that road. And my estimate is probably be half the cost for the city to do it. And so there's 6 lots there. We'd like to continue to build small residential family housing under $150,000, which is well in line with what people can afford in the city of Biloxi for the working man. Thank you for your time. Yes, sir.
The city had no problem doing it when we talked about this before. I didn't know if you were going to bring some kind of plans to show it to the city, what you're trying to develop there, but everything's in place to have the road. Everything they need is there. I already checked with Billy Ray Allen.
Yes,
he
sir.
went out there, looked at it, the last time you and I
Okay,
talked,
great.
and I brought it to them. So they thought you might bring a plan back on what you're going to do with the 6 lots.
Yeah, we do have plans ready for the 6 lots. I can bring it back if you like to the next council meeting, but we're ready to go. It's ready to be developed.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes, sir.
the base and everything, it's not hard to pave it.
Yeah, the
Put
base is
asphalt
there,
out
and, you know-
Everything's pretty much ready to go.
Well, thank you,
All right.
Councilman. Thank you, everyone.
Anyone else on my right, your left, that would like to come up and speak? If not, anyone in the back? Okay. If not, citizen comments are now closed. Move on to the policy agenda. Ms. Lucy?
Ordinance to amend Appendix A to Section 1512 of the Code of Ordinances.
Do we have a motion?
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Glavin, seconded by Mr. Tisdale. Being a first reading, we'll move on to Resolution B.
Resolution granting conditional use to authorize the construction of 6 apartment units for property identified as 2756 Fernwood Road.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Mr. Tisdale. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Glavin. Any discussion, Mr. Tisdale?
Yeah, this is I think it's titled the Augusta House. The South Mississippi AIDS Task Force had, as I recall in listening at the Planning Commission, I think they had actually constructed that building a number of years ago. They were serving patients there at that facility. It was not, I guess, understood, if memory serves me correct, that they were in fact units there where residents were housed and residents would come and go. It's been empty for, I don't know, maybe 2 years now, and I guess is it the AIDS Task Force is again wanting to rehab that building?
Yes, sir, that's what they're wanting to do, and they're wanting to construct 6 units, residential units on the inside apartments for helping AIDS patients get back on their feet again. The question came up about how long they would be there. They said it really just depends on the
individual and the circumstances.
Yes.
And this was the use prior to its closing as well. So what they've done is updated the units or maybe move some walls or whatever.
Yes, sir.
And they'll be using it for the same purpose, the same use, only this time they will have crossed all the T's and dotted the I's, apparently.
That's correct.
Okay.
Question, Jerry. What kind of qualification do you have to have to be in the AIDS force? What is the difference? It's not regular apartments, so it's going to be totally different. It's going to be like a hospital, in a sense.
Yes and no. I don't know to what level medical will be involved in this. I do know that they're not expanding the footprint any. They're creating the units within the existing building. The building on the outside will not change. There was some concern from a neighbor who owns a body shop right behind it. But my experience with these type of operations is they're very quiet. You never really know that they're there. As far as what their medical credentials have to be, I just don't know.
Yes, a lot of, 2 or 3 people come to the city already trying to pass things and something else, so they could do the rehab with the people, the Lortab freaks and the cocaine freaks and stuff like that.
Yes,
we
sir.
voted all of them down. So I mean, I don't know, you need to make sure what you're approving there.
Well, the good thing about this is it's a conditional use. So if we do experience problems with it, again, the council has the right to call that into question. You can always revoke a conditional use permit.
But they have to go through the state, get licensed and everything to do this. Have they done all that?
Yes,
Do
sir,
you
I'm
know?
sure. I'm sure they'd have to be state licensed.
say again?
They would have to be state licensed to operate.
Yeah, I mean, have they done that? You said they were there before, they're going back on something different. Had they been licensed before by the state?
Okay, did we ask them if they had license? No, we typically don't get into that. If that's something that y'all'd like to see, then we can ask them to provide their
I think that's pretty
licensing
important.
documentation.
You're dealing with something pretty significant here. So definitely you need to make sure they are licensed and qualified to do what you said they do.
We can request that.
Are they going to have doctors and that on staff? I mean, you're talking about a mini emergency room, basically what you're doing, and people living there.
I get the idea that it's not a mini emergency room. I think Mr. Lawrence's suggestion that they have whatever certificates or licenses are appropriate, I think that's a great idea, but basically these are AIDS individuals that are being served and lived at that location. I would assume if
It's
there's a
more like
medical emergency or anything of that nature, they go to the hospital or urgent care around the corner just like
That's
everybody
correct.
else.
This is more like transitional housing than anything else. Get them back.
That'd be a
on
better
their feet.
description. Okay.
Any other questions?
I only got one for the director, or just to clarify. So I'm looking through some of the specific language, and you said the conditional use is designed to screen, buffer, or otherwise minimize adverse visual effects. Is that anything specific, or that's just a general description in case something is put up or whatever that deters from the surrounding area?
That's just more of an umbrella type statement.
Umbrella.
So that if, rather than being very specific about what the adverse impacts might be, if there's something that happens that's outside the scope of what we would normally see happen, the council always has the right to address those things. So conditional use is a good way to go on this.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor? Unanimous.
I'm just, until you give me
6-1.
some medical, you're dealing a tough medical situation, I'm telling you.
6-1. George is against. Moving on.
Resolution to deny conditional use approval for property to be considered as short-term rental for property identified as 429 Hope Street.
I'll move.
I'll second it.
You're moving it to deny?
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion, Mr. Guines?
Yeah, Ms. Creel, could you give me a little update on why the planning commission denied it?
One of the conditions involved in short-term rental is that, or the considerations is that you wouldn't put short-term rental in the middle of a residential area, which this is. This is actually the Hope 6 development down there. The second thing is that short-term rental is not allowed where it conflicts with subdivision covenants or private covenants, and we received a letter from Helen Werby that said that this type of operation would be in conflict with the covenants for Hope 6.
Okay, thank you.
Any discussion, Mr. Tisdale?
I can't add anything to that. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor to deny? 6-1. Demings against. Moving on to Resolution D.
Resolution to grant conditional use approval to authorize a 30-unit apartment complex, property located at 126 Briarfield Avenue.
Do you have a motion? Motion by Mr. Deming,
I'll second it for discussion.
seconded by Mr. Glavin. Any discussion, Mr. Deming?
Mr. Creel, you want to, I think this fits everything we've been asking for. And when we talk about what we want for short-term rentals, this is a localized structure that is all around, not around single-family residents, all around it. I think this is when we talk about other apartment complexes coming in, this is what we've suggested. This doesn't have holdover tenants that are complaining about it. So give me the rundown.
Okay. Is the property zoned correctly for what they're asking to do? Yes, with a conditional use. It is zoned RM30. It has CB zoning to the west, it has CB zoning to the south, and it has CB zoning to the east. This piece of property just happens to be zoned multifamily. Now, there was some concerns at the Planning Commission from the Hotel Motel Association that possibly apartment complexes are not having to comply with the same requirements that we would place on a hotel, that the hotels have more stringent regulations that they have to comply with. Now, in this particular case, what happened is that Mr. Zhang came in with a proposal to build 30 apartments. That was his intention. These were going to be apartment buildings for residential purposes. And when the project was almost finished, he called me and asked me if the property was zoned for short-term rental. And I said, well, it is, but you'd have to get a conditional use approval from the Planning Commission and the City Council. And he said that what had happened is that when they were nearing completion, he had been approached by a real estate management company that asked him to consider doing short-term rental and allowing them to manage the property for him as short-term rental.
He chose to take that route.
Yes,
it
was his decision, right. Yes. So he came back in and made application to go to the Planning Commission for conditional use to allow the apartment complex to become short-term rental. Which they granted. They did, yes. It was a split vote, I believe, but it was granted. And there are arguments both ways. There are positives and negatives on both sides of, is this a good idea, is this not a good idea?
So that sounds almost like it's a subjective determination and it's somebody's opinion, whether it's a good idea or it's a bad idea. I think it's Mr. Zhang's determination of whether it's a good idea or a bad idea what he does with his property. When we talk about the added requirements that a hotel or motel would have to subject themselves to, what are those? What are those conditions, and who imposes those conditions?
Well, they're not really that different, but I guess the main one is that with an apartment complex is not required to be fire sprinklered.
I'm sorry.
And is not required to be fire sprinklered, have a sprinkler system inside. Apartments are not required. Hotel motel is required to be sprinklered. That's the one that really jumps out. As far as parking requirements and those type of things, if you look at it from the standpoint of hotel versus apartment, the parking requirements are almost the same. But then if you look at it in terms of apartment complex being used for short-term rental, that adds another equation in, because in most cases what happens with short-term rental is that you have a number of, in most cases, you have a number of different family members wanting to come together and to stay in the same unit so that they can all interact together inside. In those cases, sometimes you may have as many as 3 or 4 cars that show up for one unit, so you have to take that into consideration. What we had put into the ordinance for short-term rental is that the parking requirements would be 1 parking space per bedroom, you know, like if it were for a house that was being used for short-term rental. 4-bedroom house would have 4 parking spaces there. You know, again, Mr. Zhang may think it's a good idea. The Motel Association might not think it's a good idea, you know.
And this is just my opinion, so and it's subjective as well, that I think that the Hotel Motel Association's argument is more with competition than sprinkler systems. I don't see that. I think that we should move forward with this project on the council. I think that the resolution was already granted by the Planning Commission, and I think we should adopt what the Planning Commission chose to see fit. If the argument is for sprinklers, I think that we should overcome that if that's the argument.
Well, let me mention one thing. Although he wasn't required to sprinkler, Mr. Zhang did sprinkler this building. So this particular building is fire sprinklered. Well, then but the code as a rule.
Then it's a moot point, in my opinion. The argument for it is moot.
Is there another argument?
There's some things, exit lights and those kind of things, but nothing. The differences are not so great for the two. Now, one of the other arguments that could be made is that in this part of Biloxi, we're not seeing a lot of residential happening right now. The single-family houses that are being built, the big ones between Rodenberg and further on down going east, in my opinion, are being built ultimately to create short-term rental. Even though they're built like single-family houses, I think ultimately we're going to start getting applications for them to convert to short-term rental. When you approve an apartment complex for short-term rental, you're adding STR units, but you also have to look at it from the standpoint that you're removing permanent residential housing from our inventory of places for people to live. Well, I think so that's just a consideration.
If we apply that logic, then we're looking at legislation by compulsion. I don't think that we can compel people to use their units for that reason. I think that that's a product of the economy, and if we have a surplus of short-term rentals, at some point those owners are going to convert them to long-term rentals of some sort. But I think, again, that's something for the property owner to make, and they'll make a monetary decision on what's best for
right. This is a city council decision, and all I'm doing is providing you with all the information so that you can make that
Jerry,
decision.
Last question that I have is escaping me at the moment. I'll let someone else ask, and if it comes back to me, I'll circle around.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Glavin?
Yeah, you know, listen, we looked at 2 different applications here on our agenda today, and in this case, at least for me, what I'm looking at is the surrounding area and what kind of test does that provide us, and it clearly shows that the surrounding area is not predominantly residential or single-family homes. So that's a big thing. The other thing I look for is there a predominance of people coming out to speak against it that it's going to affect? And so far, I haven't heard anything on those issues. On the conversation of what motels and hotels have to abide by and what short-term rentals in this case has to abide for, I think is irrelevant, only because there's a duly submitted application. Yes, hotels and motels go through inspections. There's a taxing element that this should fall under, that they have to pay the lodging tax because it is a lodging establishment. But as long as they're following all that, I don't have and listen, I'm in the tourism industry, and I don't have a beef with that in this case. Usually the test is does it encroach on single-family homes, and do they think it's going to affect their lives? And if there's an audience that comes forward and says we don't want it and can prove that it's affecting them, that's when I would look at it differently. So far, unless the councilman in this ward issues an opinion of something that's adverse, I don't see why we shouldn't support it. Thank you.
I'll ask a question.
Hold on, Mr. Dominguez has last rebuttal. Okay, Mr. Lawrence, go ahead.
This man came to you to build an apartment building, correct?
Yes, sir.
Then he changed it. So where's he saving the money at? He's not paying the same taxes? Is it a different tax base? I mean, he did this to save money. He didn't do this to help anybody except himself. That's why. Why did he build a hotel or a motel? Because the reason, because he's saving money doing something, and then you got it changed. So I mean, that's the problem. Now, what are we losing as a city?
Well, what are we losing? You know, like I mentioned before, you know, you are losing some units that would have been for permanent housing that will now be used for short-term rental. But we do get the, we have put some provisions in there to make sure that the taxes are being paid, because every year when a short-term rental operator comes in to renew their conditional use permit, they have to show us proof of tax payment in order to get renewed. So we did what we could to make sure that they are paying the same revenues that the hotel motel.
And what's so much different between a hotel and this? There's got to be more than just a tax. There's something else. Either you missing it or I'm missing it or what, but there's something else. I mean, this guy didn't do this for a reason. He coming for a reason. He knew what he was doing when he came in.
Well, the reason...
It's apartments, not a hotel.
Well, the reason is the revenue potential. You know, short-term rental is a very lucrative thing to get into. You know, instead of making X number of dollars per month off of that unit, you're going to be making X number of dollars per day or per weekend or per week.
It's no different than a hotel.
That unit. So
what's the difference in a hotel? Same thing you just said.
Well,
there's something else here. I'm telling you, there's something else. There's a reason this is done this way. I mean,
well, he's here.
Somebody needs to explain to me
question.
exactly what we lose in this situation. Otherwise, we won't build any more hotels and motels. Everybody just build an apartment and then say we're doing short-term rental. There's more to this than what you're saying. I'm telling you.
Well, the difference between the two is that with a hotel, if a hotel comes in, they have to go into commercial zoning. If they go into the right commercial zoning, they don't have to come before the Planning Commission or the City Council for approval. But with an apartment complex, if the zoning is multifamily, they're going to have to go before the Planning Commission and the City Council before we can issue them a license.
Let me ask conditional use. Right?
That's correct, conditional use.
Let me ask Jerry to a point that you made regarding permanent apartments and that sort of thing in that area. I mean, it's up to 30 units. He doesn't have to declare all of them as 30 STR units, right? Well, you know, if you wanted to save 10 of them for a more long-term apartment use, that would be allowable.
That's correct. He has 30 units. He doesn't have to declare all of them as short-term rental. From a selfish perspective, I would rather it be all or nothing, because it's a lot easier for us to enforce rather than trying to sort out which units are short-term rental and which ones are not. Either they're all short-term rental or none of them are short-term rental, and that gives us some clarity when we go out there and enforce the ordinance.
I believe we faced a number of those issues in the past. And did you have a question?
How much opposition have you had to this?
There was a couple of people from the neighborhood that came to the Planning Commission meeting that spoke out about it, but they actually lived. One of them actually lived across the street and north of the complex, and I think there was one other one that may have came in and spoke against it. But as far as the location goes, you've got the commercial on the beach, the surf style that faces the beach, then you've got the RM30, then you've got the single family. So, I mean, you know, we've talked about transitional zoning before, and that's exactly what transitional zoning is.
Jerry, let me ask also, when this reaches the assessor, okay, a lot of, revenue basis is how you evaluate that. I mean, you generate more revenue, it's going to hit the tax rolls for more.
That's true. What has happened is that we've worked with the tax assessor, and when we approve these units, we notify them just like we notify them that a new house is going on the tax rolls, and so they assess those units at a higher assessment rate than they do if it were just permanent apartments. So it's now being used for essentially for commercial use. Taxes will be higher.
You said they had a split vote. What was the vote? They had how many people? The commission was against it?
I think it was like 7-3.
7-3 vote. And you said a split vote. That's not us.
Well, I mean, meaning it wasn't unanimous.
That's a bad split there, man.
Yeah.
I just think there's more to it. I think we're going to lose out in the city. We keep approving these apartments, stuff like that. So, I mean, you know, and I think will it help the hotel moment? That will hurt them? Probably will. That's business they're going to lose. And that tax money you guaranteed from them, pretty much through the hotel, through the state. This other thing, you got to chase it down.
Mr.
It's hard.
Yeah, so in looking through all this, there are 18 one-bedroom units, 12 two-bedroom units, 49 parking spaces, which would be, based on what you said, Mr. Creel, sufficient for an apartment complex of 30 units, or that would be sufficient for 30 short-term rentals?
Yes, sir.
I think. And would it be sufficient for a 30-room motel? Probably not, simply because you've got employees that have to park somewhere.
Yes, sir, but our ordinance requirements for employees is minimal. It's one for a hotel motel, it's one per unit plus one for the office, meaning the office worker that's overseeing everything.
Right. And for some reason, I'm thinking I may be incorrect, but wasn't there a proposal, maybe looking at going through DRC to build more apartments across the street?
Yes, sir.
And that is zoned community business?
CB.
CB.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me kind of paint the picture of what the lay of the land is. As you're on the beach looking at Surf Style, right? That the rest of that block on the left side is zoned RM30, and on the right side there's one residence.
You're talking about behind the Surf Style,
Exactly.
north of it. Yes,
exactly.
Sir.
Behind the residence. So I'm assuming, I think that's zoned residential. I think so. That block is split behind Surf Style. On the left or west side is RM30. On the right side is residential.
That's correct.
The next block north is all residential.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, there's some RM30 because Barney Foster has a rental there, short-term rental. And there are probably, I'm guessing here, Jared, you may have a better number, 3 or 4, maybe 5 short-term rentals that are lawfully permitted and operating single-family residences. I noticed we received a handout from Mr. Zhang, and I appreciate that, and they show a picture of a multifamily facility used as a short-term rental, and it is used as a short-term rental is the good news, I guess, but the bad news is it's not lawfully permitted.
That's correct. We have that one in code enforcement right now.
Exactly. So I don't know if Mr. Zhang plans to build more units to the left, across on the other side of Briarfield. It's currently zoned community business. He could build 30 apartment units right there and use them as short-term rentals, no questions asked. He'd get the permits and start that construction tomorrow if he plans more construction. Noticed also in the transcript that Mr. Zhang mentioned that, well, short-term rentals are preferable to Section 8 housing, and my thought on that is that occasionally we hear that from developers. If you don't like this, it could be worse. Just to kind of prick that balloon or knock down that straw man, anybody can have just about any residential structure of any sort can be used in the Section 8 housing program, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
All right, so that could happen anywhere in anybody's neighborhood, okay? Are there plans to have any on-site management?
I know I see Mr. Zhang out there, and I see Mr. Gill and Mr. Levitard, and maybe they can answer. I just have one or two questions along that line. They may want to come up and answer these if you'd like, if you don't mind.
That'd be good.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Mr. Levitard, a question or two, and are there plans to have on-site management there? Or I know that part of the requirement for short-term rental is that somebody has to be within X number of minutes or miles to respond in the event of emergency. Is anybody going to be residing there on-site for that purpose?
Yes, there's one unit that will be the manager's office that will be available for 24-hour notice and management of the project.
And I'm curious, and as Mr. Lawrence is, I guess, that everything was set to go, and I drive through that neighborhood almost once a week. They require a lot of care and attention out there, and I'm happy to provide it. You know that, Mr. Creel. But I've seen the apartments go up. They're nice-looking apartments. I was there at the Planning Commission. Look like nice units, but it bothers me that we move forward in RM30 for apartments, everything's great, and then at the 11th hour, and I assume it's based on what I've heard, it's an opportunity to make the profit margin a little bit larger. Somebody will manage or market the property. There'll be somebody on site there. But I also construe this almost as a back door, I think, to what Mr. Lawrence alluded to or mentioned specifically, that if I want to do short-term rentals, I'll just build apartments, and because of what we're doing here on Briarfield, you did it there, I want you to do it for me as well. I don't know if I have any more questions for you, Mike. Actually,
well,
not quite done yet. I want to finish painting a picture of the neighborhood. So to the east, on the next block east, you have an RV park that was zoned CB. You've got surf-style rental along Highway 90 CB. You've got the new apartments that we're discussing now behind that. To the west, on the other side of Briarfield, is CB. To the north is all single-family residential, a few of which are short-term rentals. There were 3 residents who appeared at the Planning Commission to speak against it: Mr. Cotton, Ms. Bernard, and Mr. Anderson. And what's interesting about this neighborhood is that there are a number of different zones out there. It's almost like a small city. It's not all residential, it's not all commercial. So it's been an interesting mix. And the primary concern is that the nature of the neighborhood is that it's primarily almost exclusively residential with a lot of retirees. They worry about the traffic. I worry about, again, the fact that I'm going to build apartments and at the last minute I'm coming to you for a conditional use. I have nothing to lose. I would have been much more comfortable with this if the rezoning had been requested to community business prior to the project beginning. I don't know if you have a comment or two, but since I dragged you up here,
okay,
you're welcome to a
yes,
comment.
I do have some comments, and I don't know if it's possible. I don't know how to work this thing. I can show you the zoning and the little zoning maps are prepared to show you how it looks.
Thank you.
As you can see, I'm pointing out that down below the CB is you have a motel that's facing the beach right at the Briarwood Road entry. You go up to Briarwood and it creates somewhat of a triangular form. You got something for me? There we go, like that. I think that's fine. And what we're looking at, go back over there again, at Briarfield and Highway 90 to the west of it, we have a hotel, a motel system there. Just to the west of Briarfield, of course, we have the Surfside, which is a retail center. Then going up, it's more of a rectangular with a triangular type of shape at the very top of it. That is Bacon Place Road, and then, of course, on the other side of it is Pine Grove. Where I'm indicating the RM30 is the subject property that we're talking about right now, and just to the east of that is the RS-10, which is a single-family residence. There's one residence right there. Then as you could go over to the next street over, we have an RV park that's just recently been done over there, a second phase of one. And then we have the first phase of the RV park there coming back down. We have the Waffle House, and then moving further east, we have 2 more hotels over there. Oh, I can do that? Oh, okay. All right. So this is the subject property here. And so what we're seeing is a natural, what I would consider a natural break in zoning. If you notice, all of this area right in here is pretty much RM30, community business, with just a small portion of this area right here being an RS10. This little project right here is a short-term rental at this time. I think there's 2 units there now. Up further, up higher, that's the short-term unit that we were looking at. Now, the number of units is 30 units. We know that. Mr. Lawrence keeps asking one question about what's the difference between a hotel and a motel, a hotel and say, an apartment complex or short-term. What happens is when you build an apartment complex under the International Building Code, it goes into the International Building Code because it is more of a commercial complex. It is rated or classified as an R2. An R2, in the rating of it, specifies and gives you certain criteria that you have to build to. And an R2 is more for permanent type residents, people who are going to live there for a longer length of time, like a condominium or a larger apartment type complex, which falls under an R2. Now, when we take it to a short-term rental, where you have people that are not going to be there longer than 30 days, that brings it to an R1. Now, the type of, or the difference between the two, construction-wise, is the same. The construction type on this project is a 5B. It's an unprotected wood frame structure. If it moves to the R1, it's still a 5B, wood frame unprotected. The building is sprinkled, so we're actually going a little bit above what the code requirement for as that part of it goes. I think, and addressing one of the questions that you had, as business people, I think we have to be flexible, and I think we have to look at the opportunities that are presented to us. In developing this case to go for the conditional use, one of the things that did occur, 11 months ago, the project basically started under construction. And it was to be permitted and used as an apartment complex. Now, just like a hotel, you can't count 100% occupancy. So you use a number like 75% occupancy with a 25% vacancy. So when you're looking at your numbers, you're doing things like that. So when a business opportunity came before him, was with a real estate company who is managing it, who primarily leases these spaces from the naval base, the Navy CB base, and Keesler for people who are in training here. That's one of the biggest purposes that they approached him for. So I think it's a natural thing for a businessman to look at a condition that is more conducive to doing what he is doing in his business and accept that and look forward to maybe we can do that. So he did ask for conditional use, which is allowed under the RM30. Now, one good condition that we see that when we issue or if we grant a conditional use, it's not a permanent thing. If we find that there are code violations or other problems that we're having, the city council, along with the planning commission, can revoke that conditional use permit and stop whatever is taking place there. I think that because of the area that we're looking at, it's a perfect natural progression in the zoning to allow that to occur right there. Because, again, it's not affecting any neighborhood. It's not endangering the neighborhood by splitting the property, where if you had a residence between the beach and the project we're looking at, that would be somewhat an endangerment or kind of would be somewhat of an uncomfortable situation. But all of the residences basically to the north is creating a natural barrier, as we can see. And that's pretty much all I got to say. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I have some. Mike?
Yes.
You said they had a room there, so is the man going to live in the room, or you just have a room for an office?
No, there will
You got set it, you said 24 hours so you can call somebody.
Yes.
Someone actually going to live on the property.
There will be a live-in manager there, yes.
Then do you have a staff, employees, or you don't need a staff? Don't sit in a
They really don't need a whole lot of staff, but they would be able to bring in maintenance people as needed to do maintenance and stuff of that nature, housekeeping and various different things of that nature.
So that's the big difference right there between that and the hotel, where they have to have staff and everything. You don't. So you're saving money there. And then the taxes are the same basically against an apartment compared to a motel?
No, actually, I think the city and the government actually will actually get a better tax revenue from it if it's based on the amount of revenue generated. Because if we're able to do it even at a 25% vacancy, at the 3 to 4% tax rate, whatever, I can't remember that tax rate is, when you calculate it out, there's going to be a larger amount of money that goes back into the tax coffers from that.
What was the biggest reason you changed it from an apartment to short-term rentals?
As I was saying earlier, the gentleman had an opportunity. What he had is there's a management company who predominantly worked with the military bases, and what they're looking at is local places that they could put some of their troops in during the training processes other than hotels. When I was in the Coast Guard, they used to put us in hotels by putting them in a short term for a couple of weeks or a month, if that's what their training is. It's normally 2 to 3 weeks. They're able to prepare a few meals and do various different things like that. And so they're predominantly looking at short-term rentals for Keesler Air Force Base and the Navy CB base.
How many apartments are you going to have set aside for Keesler now?
I don't know if there's any particular number set aside. It would be 29 units.
Yeah, do it for that reason. If you do it for that reason, you got to lock in an X amount of apartments for them. You know, you need 15 or 10 or whatever it is.
Right. Well, they would have a total of 29 available. 30 units, but one would be the manager's office. It'd be 29 units available. If there's 10 occupied by one of the other military forces, whatever would be left over, of course, you know, they would try to rent it to them as well. So I don't know how that would work exactly.
The last couple of places that come, they've all brought the same thing about Keesler. And so when has Keesler become such a demand to put people off base?
Well, you know, to answer that, I don't know, but I do know that we've done a lot of lodging facilities as an architect out there, and I know that most of their lodging facilities have been 100% utilized, so they may be looking for some other transit units for that. I can't answer that question.
Let me jump in, and there's some opportunities in the weekly rentals in Jackson County and even D'Iberville. There's a lot of those, you know, weekly kind of opportunities are being met there on Interstate 10 in Orange Grove also.
That's correct.
I don't have a question. I want to shift to a different topic, so.
Okay.
Since you were prepared and did your homework, you may be excused.
Thank you. You want to leave this here?
As a teacher, don't touch the machinery, sir.
I'll leave it.
I just want to remind the council, coincidentally, we had Mr. Langlanez here who owns Beacon Insurance. And as I recall, and Mr. Creel, you correct me if I'm wrong, there was a single-family residence right behind Beacon Insurance. I think that's Joachim Place, Little Butte thing, and there's residential all behind that, but directly behind Beacon Insurance, single-family residential structure that a gentleman divided into 2 apartments and had been running short-term rentals out there for a number of months, and either it dawned on him or he was nabbed in the act. And it came before us, as I recall. And the reason I mention this is because This would have been, again, a commercial enterprise, as a short-term rental that was intruding.
Encroaching.
Encroaching,
Yes.
thank you, that's the word I'm looking for. Encroaching into a residential neighborhood. And really, we have a very similar set of circumstances right here. So the fact, with all due respect to Mr. Levitard, Mr. Gill, and Mr. Zhang, none of us live in that neighborhood, but there's a lot going on in that neighborhood with the short-term rentals, lawfully permitted and not permitted, with the RV park, and now we're looking at short-term rentals when everybody understood that they were going to be apartments. And again, you could build all the short-term rentals you want across the street if Mr. Zhang owns that property, because it's currently zoned and permitted there. But did I remember that correctly, right there behind Beacon Insurance with the home and everything? And
Yes.
this council, as I recall, and I think it was unanimous, said, no, we don't want the intrusion into a residential area, and here, that's exactly what we're doing here. So anyway, that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Deming?
Yeah, I think there were a few more differences than similarities in that Beacon Insurance encroachment. In this situation, as Mr. Levitard clearly and plainly showed, that on one side we have hotel and motel, the other side we have CB, south of it we have retail. The northern part is the only residential portion, of which already has numerous authorized and unauthorized short-term rentals already. We're not encroaching onto a community that isn't already participating in this via lawfully or unlawfully. This doesn't encroach on a neighborhood. There's, again, like all the other complexes that we've dealt with so far, there are no holdover tenants that are complaining about this. Second off, as Mr. Mike stated too, if you don't support this, you don't support the men and women of our uniform either. Just
What's that? Say that again?
That was a joke.
I missed the joke.
He's saying if you don't support this, then you
It's a
don't support our
legislative tactic.
Yeah, that's just a sentence they use. That doesn't mean nothing.
The thing is, even the arguments that it should be, that the Hotel Motel Association could or would have, I think we've complied with this, with the spring, or they've complied with the sprinkler requirements, so we don't have much of an argument that the parking spaces are even applicable to the code if it were. I can't imagine another location ripe for this conditional use. I know that Mr. Tisdale, thank you, states that he would consider this had the zoning been different. We have conditional use for a purpose, and there's some benefits to conditional use because we can look retroactively at what we've done. So I think that further suggests that this is even maybe more appropriate than had it been zoned differently. I think the Planning Commission got this 70% correct when they voted 7-3, and I hope this council will move forward and approve this.
Mr. Barrett?
Earlier this year, late last year, we updated our short-term rental. You know, we basically, like Kenny said, gave it more teeth. And I believe that this property complies with everything that is in there. You look at the surrounding area, and it screams short-term rental. People change their mind all the time, regardless of how it doesn't matter. This is this guy's property. And people change their mind all the time. I mean, my wife decided last week she wanted to change the color in her bedroom. And so people change their minds. So regardless of why he did it, or if it's because he can make more money, as a business person, he'd be foolish not to try to make more money. And as Kenny stated earlier, one of the things that you know is a gauge on how we go on these deals, there's some areas that this would fit in that we could look at the surrounding area and say, you know what, even though we could approve this, it just doesn't set well. And as far as the encroaching on the neighborhood, even if it was doing that, where's the people complaining about it? There's nobody from the neighborhood here complaining. I've been here for 2.5 years, and multiple times we've had people in this room fighting this very issue. Nobody's here. So generally, I don't go against the person that is that it's their ward. However, I can see no reason at all to not approve this. And it's something that if it doesn't go well, we can always take it back. There's no reason. It's almost like we're looking for a reason not to do it instead of looking for a reason to help. That's all I have to say.
Just to be clear, there is a single-family residence adjacent to this property. It abuts it on the east side. I think that's the Granthams on Pine Grove Avenue. So, yeah, it's impacting some residents there. Anyway, I've said all I can say. Thank you.
Going back to the parking, since we're having an apartment motel complex here, the people coming with boats and trailers and stuff like that, how are they going to park? Same time we had a little Quintin, they had no parking. So what are you going to do with people coming in to go to the fishing tournaments, all these events? But even if they come to cruising, they bring the trailers with the cars and everything in it, and you said there's no parking, but one unit for each unit. So what are you going to do with all these people? Y'all didn't consider that when y'all did this?
We haven't had any complaints about boat
parking. When they come, they're not going to have any parking.
Yeah.
There's going to be a hotel. They're going to come in. That's fine, but you got to have places for these people to park. And they come with boats and trailers and car trailers and everything else. I mean, behind my house there, they use 2 different lots. So you got 30 units. We haven't tell how many trucks and cars and boats you're going to get, and you have no place to park them.
Yeah,
did y'all consider that, Mike?
I think it would be no different than if someone showed up at a hotel or a motel with a car or truck with a trailer. That would be, I think, an individual thing that we would have to look at. But I think he would have to fall under the same type of regulations that a hotel and motel would fall under. Now, I'm fairly abreast of the building codes and the zoning codes, and I don't know if that's was ever addressed for a hotel, motel, or any other type of complex on that. Now,
Well,
Mr.
my
Creel
question was,
could speak to that better. But
did you even look at that?
No.
But those kind of events like the cruising and the fishing tournaments, the building, and they come in, and they bring the boats and the trailers and the cars and the trailers, and so 3 or 4 vehicles may be for one room.
Sure.
So, I mean,
yeah, I understand what you're saying, but as an architect designing a project such as this, even if it was a condominium project that would allow multiple units to have multiple cars, we still don't take into consideration boat parking or RV parking. What we're looking at is the number of parking spaces and the size of parking spaces based on that zoning requirement. And so far, I've not seen anything in any of the city land development ordinance that discusses what do you do if you have a trailer with a boat on it that is coming to a hotel or a motel or something else. So we really don't look at that, honestly, because it's not in the ordinances that for us to address.
well, it's hard to put in there, but I mean, we have 2 or 3 events every year that
Sure.
that people come down there, and they come loaded, and they spend a week here with, not drinking loaded, just loaded with cars and boats and that,
Sure, and we like to have them here too.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if y'all even addressed that at all.
No, like I said, we normally wouldn't. That's really an anomaly for us as architects in the designing process, because all we're doing is designing towards the requirements of the land development ordinance and the parking requirements that are given to us. And they have specific size that we have to utilize, obviously, in the parking lot and the parking spaces. But that's never been an object that we've had to look at. Now, I've done marinas that's been in the water, over the water and stuff, that is a consideration, but it's still parking. And we would make, such as the small craft harbor, we would make larger parking spaces for our boat and trailer, but we're anticipating that there.
You better have maybe 2 rooms and a couple of managers for the fights,
Right.
They start fighting over the parking.
Right.
George, if I can offer something that may ease your concern, if they did do this as an apartment complex or as a hotel, that would still be an issue. However, you have a built-in fail-safe with this because it is conditional use. If that does become such an overwhelming issue over time, we can address that. I mean, that's something that benefits us being a conditional use, that if the usage of the property becomes a nuisance to the community, as a whole, we can revoke the conditional use. So that's something we couldn't do had it been done either other of the suggested uses.
But you don't get that issue if they come back to you. You're not gonna know that unless they complain about that. The owners, you're not gonna know anything. Like me, well, I'm gonna know.
Okay, I think we all have an opinion here, so ready for the question?
Ready.
All in favor? 5-2. Tisdale and Lawrence against. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Move.
Motion by Mr. Guines.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tisdale. Any discussion, Mr. Barrett?
Yes, on item A, let me pull it up. We had actually talked to the county, and so I want to do some changes to that. The actual cost in this is, instead of splitting and hiring an outside company, the county was going to do the work. And I think the quote that got put into here was with Warren Paving doing the work and us splitting the blacktop. The actual cost for the asphalt is going to be around $15,600, and the county is going to do all the work. So instead of it costing 30-something thousand and us paying $17,500, we're buying the asphalt, and they're going to do the labor and provide and use their equipment instead of hiring an outside company, because it is a small road. So if we can change it to read $15,600 for our part to buy the blacktop, with the county providing the labor and the equipment to do the work.
Do we have that in writing?
I have the email right here from the county.
Okay. You moving it?
We had two ways. One of them was this way, and then the other one. And so what got put into the agenda was with Warren Paving doing the work. And so there's no reason for the county to pay $17,500 and us pay another $2,000 to get the same result.
I'll second it with Mr. Barrett changes.
Let me read the changes into the record. This is on the resolution. You go down through the whereases. The fifth whereas down reads, whereas the estimated cost, it would be changed to say, whereas the estimated cost of asphalt for the necessary repairs to Snug Harbor Road are $15,000.
$15,600.
600?
Yes, sir. $15,600.
The sixth whereas would read, whereas in discussion with the County Board of Supervisors, it was indicated Harrison County would be willing to manage the pavement repairs on Snug Harbor if the city would reimburse the county for the asphalt estimated to be $15,000. The seventh whereas would read, whereas the county will oversee and manage the repairs to Snug Harbor as well as order the asphalt for the paving job. Number 8, whereas on the next page, whereas upon completion of the repairs to Snug Harbor, the city would reimburse the county for the asphalt, approximately $15,000. The 9th whereas reads, whereas funding for the city's share of the associated necessary repairs to Snug Harbor is available in the city's capital project number 1025. Now therefore be it resolved, in section 2 it reads, the city of Biloxi requests the county's assistance in pavement repairs to Snug Harbor by managing the project and agreeing to reimburse the county for the cost of the asphalt, which are anticipated to be $15,000. $15,600. We could pull this and I could put it a clean one on the agenda next time, or you can take my
either way
handwritten.
Okay, so we got a motion to amend by Mr. Barrett and a second by Mr. Guines. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous votes. Okay, any other items you'd like to discuss?
That's all I have.
Mr. Glavin?
Yeah, on item B, I know we're wanting to purchase some computer software and equipment. It looks like a switch, Cisco switch, or some products from Cisco. Is that correct, Chief?
Which one?
Item B.
Nikki's not here evidently to explain it, but it's the equipment that marries everything, all of the computers and in the station and the Wi-Fi and everything is what this is.
Okay, and listen, I know we're getting close to opening this station and the training facility that also accompanies it, but do not, anything that you need to get this fully functional, don't hesitate, ask for it.
We've been working with,
Give them the date.
Oh, okay. We've been working with Mayor and Mike real close, and they've been helping me. Anything that we need, we accommodate it. But we have set a date for January 11th to do the ribbon cutting on Station 7. So if y'all want to plan for that, we would appreciate y'all being there.
All right, make sure to bring Jack.
And Jack has his own Facebook page, right?
Fire dog. That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Tisdale?
I don't have any energy left. I'm doing. No,
right.
nothing, thank you.
Mr. Guines? You got any items?
Oh, my turn?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You want me to ask him that question? Oh, okay. I don't have anything.
Mr. Lawrence? All right.
Whoa.
All righty then. All right. Whoa. All in favor of the consent agenda? Unanimous vote with Mr. Dimming out of the room. Code enforcement?
Just to make sure you're okay.
First case on the agenda today, item A, Jonathan Brown, 1632 Pringle Circle. This property is still in violation.
Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of Jonathan Brown at 1632 Pringle Circle? If not, this case is closed.
Item B, DJT Properties, LLC, 13181 Larkin Drive. This property is still in violation.
Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of DJT Properties, LLC at 13181 Larkin Drive? If not, this case is closed.
Item C on the agenda, Richard Hill, 145 Crawford Street. This property is still in violation.
Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of Richard Hill at
These-
145 Crawford?
These are the piles, Mr. Lawrence, the piles of dirt that we've talked about.
If no one's here, this case is closed.
Item D, Enrique Hurtado Juarez, 1657 Pringle Circle. That case has been resolved. Item E, Sheena Tunyet Nguyen, 156 Rossetti Street. This property is still in violation.
Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of Sheena Tuet Nguyen at 156 Rossetti Street? If not, this case is closed.
Item F, James G. Otto Estate, 6254 Shady Creek Drive. This property is still in violation. However, it has been purchased for taxes. We have the tax purchaser here in the audience. He had called me yesterday, and he has cut the grass. There were some open structures, shed structures on the property. He's gone out and secured those, but he really can't do anything until the taxes mature. The taxes are not going to mature on this property until August of next year. So what he's asking is if we would be willing to hold off on our enforcement action until August to give him a chance for the taxes to mature. Now, he has since secured this structure with a tarp to go around it, so it's not wide open like it was in the pictures that we've taken here. Well, what we could do is take no action on it today. I mean, just go ahead and let it go through. And then if y'all agree to this, what we would do is come back in August if the violations are still there. If not, then it would be resolved.
So,
Yes, sir.
so just let it go.
It's up
But
to
he would,
council.
but he would maintain the property through that?
Yes, sir. And he's here if y'all would like to hear from him. So. It's still in violation right now.
So I'll make a motion to do what you said as far as leave it until August.
Okay.
Or we're just going to close it? So, okay, close it.
It'll remain in violation, even with the motion. It'll
We won't
remain in
take
violation.
action.
But we won't take any action on it until August of next year.
So it's closed.
Okay.
Moving on.
All right. Item G, Jason J. and Latrice N. Reese, 2082 Juniper. This property is still in violation.
Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of Jason J. and Latrice N. Reese at 2082 Juniper? Being no one, this case is closed.
Item H, Susan Wenzel, 1718 Ridgeway Drive. That case has been resolved. Item I, Federal National Mortgage Association, 257 Seal Avenue. That case has been resolved.
Thank you. Moving on, do I have a motion for the routine agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale and seconded by Mr. Guines. Any discussion, Mr. Lawrence?
Big check, Walt. Appreciate the update. Thank you.
Anything else? All in favor of the routine agenda? Unanimous vote with Mr. Dimming out of the room. Do I have a motion to,
Second.
okay, recess? All in favor? Unanimous vote. Meeting recess. Thank you. Have a good day.
Ms. Creel. Ms. Creel.